Hey, welcome to TCM, Taylor Classic Movies. I'll be your host, Clay Sick Movies, and we're going way back in the past, all the way 2 months ago to April. We found a hidden gem of a video for you today that will be featuring very interesting renditions of No Pun Included and Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll. But of course, since it is community on the channel, we're going to be talking a little bit about part of the community in this intro, and that part is going to be reviewers or people who just make videos or talk about games in this small fun section of trick-taking community. And we're going to be highlighting, of course, in the video, Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll, and No Pun Included. Great people, and just the kindest. And in the very end, we're going to be talking about Board Game Dojo, which is also great. But I did want to give a shout out to someone who helped a great deal with my favorite part of the video, is when we're talking about the birds in the game, which is Blaze, by the way. Haven't touched on that yet. But Dimitri from pixeldie.com, who has an absolutely wonderful write-up on shamans, one of our favorite trick takers here on the channel. And also, if you're into abstracts, they have an amazing gift series rundown. Definitely check those out. They'll be in the description. But without further ado, let's look at this wonderful classic ancient video. Hey there, I'm Slefka in this accent attempt here, and we are in my parents' old house. You know, when you're at your parents' old house and you start looking at the old things all around you, including this TV here, playing this old movie. Well, enough of that. The game... Whoa! The game we're covering is Blaze, and before we do get to that, because we are at my parents' old house, this accent's all over the place, you think about the games you played as a kid. In fact, one of the funny things is, I actually have all of the old games I used to play as a kid in a closet in my old room, so let's go look at those now. So here we are, my childhood collection. A lot of great titles in here. You know, we got the Splotter game, Don't Wake Daddy, No Luck. Lost the Game, which has a great finale. I'll stick by that. A dog puzzle, that's always great. But yeah, I would say all these games had a great effect on me. And it's almost like the classic nature versus nurture argument or kind of discussion pushed into childhood games. Did these form what I like now? Or did I just always have a preference towards these types of games? I think it might be a little bit of the nurture. I loved Hearts. That was my first trick-taking game, and it has punishing gameplay and interesting alternative routes like shooting the moon to victory. And I've noticed I do like that in games. Sometimes scoring in games might be not as punishing as I like, and I think I almost was formed by Hearts and how that game can be a little bit brutal sometimes. And I wonder if some of these have changed how I was as a game. And so, getting to the game we're talking about now, which is Blaze, it's based off of Durock. And it is almost like an adult grew up from Durock and decided to have a little bit more of a gamery version. And seeing all those kids' games and doing all these kids' activities reminds me of Hearts. This is the first trick-taking game that I learned as a kid. I feel like card games are almost ubiquitous. Adults know them. Old adults know them. Grandparents, kids. I was talking to someone about Durock, who said that everyone and their dog knew how to play. They would just play, anytime they had a break during school. And what's interesting is Hearts was the game for me, and I've heard Euchre or 42 or Spades is across America, other games. And I found a really interesting thread on Board Game Geek that has some fascinating lists of people's first games growing up. But again, we're going to be talking about Blaze today. And this is almost a gamery version of Durock. Okay, well, so Durock. What is Durock? Well, it is a traditional Russian card game. Right, but what is Durock? Well, It's popular in most Soviet states. It's actually Russia's most popular card game. Right, but what is Dura? Well, essentially, it is a shedding game. We've covered them on the channel before, ladder climbing shedding games, where the point is to get rid of your cards as fast as possible. But that doesn't quite happen until after the decks run out. That's right, there's two phases of the game. Before the deck runs out, and then after. Before the deck runs out, you're trying to manipulate your hand and get a better hand for that second phase, where you're just trying to get your cards out as fast as possible. We're not going to go too in-depth into Dura, because this is about Blaze, but that is the general premise of the game. Get out. I was going to say get in, get out, but we're just trying to get out. So how do you play the game? Well, we're going to go to Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll. They're going to teach you how to play the game, and then we're going to circle back here. Okay, let's go. Out of the box, we have an instruction booklet, some feather cards, some betting cards, and some playing cards. The playing card deck is made up of 3 suits, numbered 1 through 9, with 2 copies of each number in the deck. Also, in each of the 3 suits are these Phoenix cards, which I'll explain a little bit later. To set up the game, each player is going to get their own stack of 3 betting cards. So let's say we're setting up a 3-player game, so we can put these back into the box. Next step is to set up the 2 rounds, so we have round A and B here. These are going to be points given to whoever gets rid of their cards first in the game. So you're going to take the number of players -1, and you're going to put in decreasing value a stack of cards that are going to be points for the players. So since we have a 3-player game here, we'll take the 1 and the 2. We're going to put the 2 on top, and those are going to be the point stack for the first round, round A. We're going to do the same for B. We're going to just take the top 2, make sure it's decreasing order, and then we're going to actually just flip that and have that set aside for later when we do play round B. These can then just go back into the box. Finally, we're going to shuffle these playing cards, deal 5 to each player. After that, you're going to half the deck, roughly equal, they say in the rules. You're going to set this deck aside for the second round up here, so you can kind of put these just off the table a little bit for now, just off to the side. And then this is going to be the draw pile that player's going to draw from. You're going to flip one of the cards. This is going to be the trump color for the round. You're going to put it kind of underneath this pile here as a reminder of trump. So here we have the game set up for 3 players. I'm going to remove these betting cards until when they become important, just a little off screen. Also off screen, we do still have the round B. And I'm going to reveal the hand. You wouldn't normally do this, but this is just for helpful teaching. A game of Blaze is played over 2 rounds. And again, those rounds are A and B. Within those rounds, you will play 2 phases each. In the first phase, you're just trying to get rid of the weak cards in your hand. Let's start the first phase with the youngest player. Let's just say it's this player right here. And it's going to be played through a series of challenges. The challenges are going to start from the active player, and they're going to be directed toward the person to their left. So just as a helpful guide here, we're going to have the active player challenging the person to their left, denoted by this cute little ice cream cone. So how a challenge works. The active player plays to the table face up any of the cards in their hand. Again, these aren't shown to players, this is just face up, for example. So maybe this player picks the 2. So then the defending player has one of 2 choices. They could pass, or they could try to defend the challenge. So if they wanted to defend the challenge, they have options here. They can play any of the same suit, but higher ranked, so they could play this 9 here. That would successfully defend that challenge. Or they can play anything that's stronger. Again, trump is blue, so they could play any of these blues. And then that wouldn't matter the rank. So if this player led this 8, they could have played this 4 blue. Since 4 is below 8, that doesn't matter. It's because blue is stronger than red. So getting back to the example here, let's say that the active player led 2, and the defending player defended with a 9. On a successful defend, the active player can attack again if they wanted to, but they can only attack with any of the numbers showing. So they could play any 2 or any 9 if it was in their hand. They do have this 2, so maybe they lead this 2. Again, this is trump, so the defending player would have to play a higher trump, and they do have a higher trump, so they play that 3. So this challenge is still being defended. Coming back to the active player, they don't have any 2, 9, or 3s in their hand, so
they are going to pass. Again, they could have optionally passed, so circling back to here, they didn't have to play that 2. They could have just passed, and it could have gone to the next player in the attack, which I'll explain in a little bit, but they did end up doing that. So they pass. That doesn't mean that the challenge is successfully defended yet. It then just goes to the next attacking player, which would be this player over here. So same rules apply. They can only attack or challenge with numbers that already exist in here. So they can play a 2, a 3, or a 9. Lucky for them, they do have a 3, so they are going to play that 3. So coming to the defending person on the challenge, they can't play any of these 1s, because a 1 of a non-trump can't beat that 3 there, so they can play this 4. Again, they could have just passed at any moment. Passing means they're going to take all these cards into their hand. Again, this is a shedding game, or a game where you're trying to get rid of cards, so that might not be the best thing. So maybe they push their luck and they play this 4. This now means 4s can be played into the challenge. I'm going to keep sliding these up here to make some room. So going back to this player again, they can play now a 4 or any of these numbers in there. They do have this 3, so maybe they do play this 3. And now coming back to this player here, they can no longer defend this, so they are actually now forced to pass. And again, rewinding back to here, they could have optionally passed. They don't have to defend. But this is the state they're in now. So in this game, you can only have up to 5 challenges. So let's say they maybe would have defended that and done that. And again, that doesn't work because obviously those are weaker. If they would have successfully defended those 5, these get discarded and then players draw back up cards. But that didn't happen. So rewinding back to what actually did happen, boop. So after they pass, the attacking players can then again add back into the challenge any numbers that were played up to, again, 5 challenges. And to reiterate, since this is a 3-player game, this person was the active player attacking the targeting player, and then the supporter was to the left of the targeted player. But in a 3-player game, that's pretty much the only 2 other players. But in a 4 and a 5-player game, not everyone is playing cards against the targeted player. It's just the person to their right, who is the active player, and the person to their left, who is the supporter. So again, just to clarify, it's the active player challenging the target player, who's also being challenged by the supporter over here. So it's the active and the supporter challenging the targeting player by playing cards and challenging them. So after this happened, maybe this person passes because they don't have, or they don't want to add any more cards into here. Like maybe they had a 9 of trump and they're like, I don't really want to play that because that person is just going to get a really good trump card. And this player over here also is going to pass, either optionally or because, again, they can't play any numbers. So these cards are now just going to be put into this player's hands. Now this player has a huge hand. After the target player takes those cards, then the challenging player, starting with the active player, will draw back up into their hand. And the players draw into their hand fully. So this player would draw back up to 5. This player already has all the cards they need. Then this player would then draw up to 5. Going back into that example where they actually defended successfully. So let's say there was only, 3 challenges and it was like this. These cards would get discarded. This player over here would draw into their hand up to 5. Then this player would draw into their hand up to 5, and then this player would draw into their hand up to 5. So the goal of the game is essentially to get rid of the weaker cards in your hand through these challenges before this deck runs out, because then after that happens, we move on into the second phase. This game also has these birds, which I'll explain now. When you are challenging with these birds, like let's say this person over here played that bird, obviously they couldn't because the bird hadn't been played. But this is a 10 when challenging, but when defending, like this player finds themselves in right now, when defending, they're 0s. So even though they're very strong on challenging the target player, when you are the target player and you're using them to defend, they're actually super weak. So this person would have to pass here because they have effectively 0s and then a non-trump 8. So these challenges would go around and around and around and continue until this entire deck has been depleted. Moving on to the second phase, now players are going to try to get rid of all their cards as fast as possible, because the goal is if you get out first, you take the higher point value on the round stack. So the first person out will get 2 points, second person out will get 1 point, and the last player doesn't get anything. And that last player is super important because that's what players will now bet on. So I've returned these bet cards because players are going to put one of them in front of either who they think is going to be that last player, or if they think they're going to be the last player, they'll put a 0 in front of that player. And again, this is all simultaneous and face down because these are the player colors, who you are. So say this player right here thinks that person's going to be the last one out. They will place that one there. Maybe this player over here thinks they're also going to be the last one out. So they're going to put a 0 over here. And then this player over here thinks maybe this player is going to be the last one out. So they'll put that there. And then players are just going to take these betting cards. Again, I'll just take them off camera. So now play continues the same challenge flow that we did in the first phase. It's just going to continue. Fast forwarding into the round, maybe this player is challenging that player and they play the 1. They have just played all their cards. They're going to take the highest card in that stack. So that's 2 points to them. And then now it's just these 2 players in the game. And again, they would go back and forth until someone plays all the cards. So maybe if it was this person, they'd take that 1. So you would then evaluate who was the last person out. If you weren't the last person out and someone bet on you, you get their point. You get to keep their card. So this person gets the blue person who thought they were going to go out. This person gets this person's color who thought they were going out. And then this person bet on themselves to go out. They were wrong, but any 0 bet just goes back to the person. Then you would play the second round. Again, you would be having higher points in the second round. You would use this B stack, and then you play the same way. And then whoever has the most points at the end wins. And that's how to play Blaze.
So, is Durock or Blaze better? Well, we talked about how Durock is the simple version and Blaze is kind of that same game but built onto it. Gamery additions added to it. And kind of like how my favorite sandwich is a BLT, you got a perfect amount of simplicity to that sandwich. But once you start adding things to it, maybe like avocado, it changes everything, right? The tomato was supposed to be the squishy component to that sandwich, and now the avocado is. So what's the tomato now? Who knows? Maybe it's just a little bit of wet. You can taste the BLT there still, even though you've added an A. And just like behind me, because we are in my parents' decorations, the Santa Clauses, these detailed, very, very specific Santa Clauses, they're interesting to look at, they're fun, they're great additions. But behind it is there that simple holiday still. That still simple decoration of fun. This is Durock, and those Santa Clauses are Blaze. They added it to it. They're detailed. But do they still spark joy during the holiday? Yeah, I'd say so. Oh, you want more than just that? Okay. I would say because it adds elements that make players care about what is going on. So you got the bidding is the aspect that makes players care about the other's hands. In Durock, you didn't really care. You just didn't want to be the last one out. You didn't care whose hand was bad, whose hand was okay. It was all about you. You were focusing on yourself. But now with the bidding, you have to pay attention to who has a horrible hand. And maybe it's not just the number of cards. Maybe this person has 8 cards or something, but they could have 8 good cards. So you're kind of paying attention on which cards people take. So everyone's more invested in others' hands. So the bidding that way, absolutely stellar. Other than that, you got the birds. These are the birds in a nutshell. Thank you, Dimitri. But in a bigger nutshell, outside of a nutshell, the birds add so much because they're strong on attack, bad on defense. You don't really want them in your hand as you're defending. Now, it might be an obvious thing to say, but you'll forget about it while you're playing. And it adds such a funny wrinkle to the attack. They're great on attack. They essentially pull out trump. But if someone doesn't successfully defend and then they go into their hand, yeah, it's bad for the moment, but then on attack, they're so much better. And then last but not least, the fact that the scoring isn't the last one out loses, but actually point based on trying to get out. It's fun. It's fun to have a race. It's nice to reward people for getting out earlier. I will say the bidding, even though it's interesting and it makes players pay attention to each other's hands, it slows down the flow for sure. If you're expecting the quickness of Durock where the deck runs out and you go right into trying to find out who's going to be the fool, who's going to be the one left over, and you have to hit that speed bump where people are bidding, you don't have the same ease, right? Because players, they get these bid cards and they are slowly contemplating everyone's hand, and it's like the game was going 50 kilometers down the highway and you just saw a speed trap and you gotta slow down a little bit. Can't get a ticket again. But I do say it's worth it, because then you pass that cop and you get right back in the fast lane and you're going the speed limit. You're going the speed limit again after you see the cop. The fact that the second hand is worth more than the first hand, it's just a little strange. They did that in Anansi too, and I get why you do it, kind of a catch-up mechanism of sorts, but it always feels bad when the player who played better in the first hand just doesn't get as many points. And in a game where it is gamery, gamers kind of want points, right? If they did better, they want to be rewarded. But hey, it's not too big of a difference. The points aren't that big. But the points are tight in this game, so maybe it is a big difference. I don't know. I guess getting to that, Duroc is a loose and fast game. I don't know if the same group wants to play this over Duroc. They're different feelings, even though they are the same game. And everything is an improvement. I think the 5 hands is better. The 5 card hand. The 5 challenges that you can do. I think they smoothed it out. It had some rough edges and they smoothed it out. They modernized it. Maybe smoothing isn't the right word. Maybe modernizing is the right word. Zoom in on me. And that is Blaze. I'm Slefka for No Trick Included, which works, because it's a beating game. Huh? It's not a climbing game or a trick-taking game. It's technically a beating game. Which sounds a little bit ooh, but they called it a Duroc game. That works. But yeah, I don't know if this was 100% of the style. I apologize to the real Slefka, but thanks so much for watching. This was brought to you by Skillshare. Hey, Real Taylor here. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize profusely. I don't know what was worse, the attempted accent or the attempt at the style of No Pun Included. I kind of butchered both equally, so apologies to Efka and everyone at No Pun Included. And but just like how they kindly did at the end of their Caesar video, thank you so much, where they shouted out this channel, I wanted to follow suit, and especially because it's community and we're covering channels and other reviewers. I wanted to shout out Board Game Dojo, who has an amazing Nana video that I stumbled upon earlier, and they cover kind of if you should import certain Japanese games, which this channel has covered a fair amount of Japanese games at this point. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna go to sleep. Good night. My favorite thing in collection is we lost the box to Guess Who, so we decided to write Guess Who a bunch on a random box and then toss the components in there. Yeah, ingenuity at its best. I broke this during filming, tried leaning on it during a take. Didn't work out for me. In fact, I think I pushed the nail so far down that it won't stay up anymore. So that's good. I probably should stop filming and just fix this. But if I have to suffer through this, so should you. Oh, oh. Okay, here we go. And a towel. And a towel. We'll do a little shake test. Perfect.